Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for coming today. My name is Scott Edinburgh. I'm the founder of Personal MBA Coach, and I'm here to talk to you about what happens behind the MBA admissions curtain. Now, we have a very exciting session in store today. We have some sort of behind-the-scenes looks into what truly happens when admissions directors read the applications, things that you might not find out by going to info sessions or talking to students or alums. And we'll also hear from 5 different successful clients who worked with us this year or last year, some this year, some last year, and who talked about their experiences just for a couple minutes. And so that'll come in about 10 to 15 minutes. You'll hear from them. But I did want to say a few things as we get started. One, because with YouTube, people keep coming in as the time goes on. And so we'll leave the meat of the presentation for around a few minutes from now. And also just sort of set the stage for where we are, right? And what's going on. First, I hope everybody is staying as safe and healthy as they can these days. It's a complicated world out there today. And as far as the application process is concerned, overall, you're looking at a competitive year. If I take a look at client inquiries for Personal MBA Coach, they're up this year, right? And so we're seeing more people applying. Now, clearly, we're doing some cool videos like this, but I think it's just more than that. You're seeing a competitive year where a lot of people are applying to schools. At the same time, certain folks are having good jobs, right? And depending on the economy, that's also going to impact just how tough it is to get in. And so what I always say to people from a timing perspective is apply when the time is right for you. Don't rush the process if you're, applying and it's too soon for you. Apply when it feels like it's the right time. At the same time, if you feel like this is your year, don't get scared off because I say that, it might be competitive this year. If you wait, then you'll get that much older, and that also, doesn't help you either. So feel free to ask questions throughout, the whole session. We'll go to a lot of the questions towards the end, but even if you just type in comments in the YouTube, I'll see them, and maybe I can talk to some of these, items or sort of key themes throughout the process. But as we're thinking about admissions and what happens behind the admissions curtain, a few things to note sort of before we get things underway formally is one, this process is going to vary a lot based on the school. Some admissions teams are huge with a lot of people. You might have faculty, you might have readers, outside readers. Some teams are small, and so as you listen today and watch me today, take this with a grain of salt. Depending on your program, you might see things that are a little bit different. Second, there are things that we know that we can't say publicly, right? So some of the stuff, obviously, this is on YouTube, so we've been cleared to say some of the stuff publicly, and some of it we really can't. And so while it is behind the MBA admissions curtain, there are things that I know that I can't say, and that if we work with you, we could definitely help you to navigate this process to the fullest extent. And then I guess lastly here, the way to think about how to maximize yourself as far as getting in and improving you while considering admissions curtain and what's really happening there is to really engage, right? Engage as much as you can. Of course, you'll learn a lot watching me today, but talking to students is super, super important. But don't do this evenly across schools. Some schools literally do not care what you do. How many students you talk to, doesn't matter. Other schools, it's really important to do that engagement. So I'll give a little bit of background about myself and sort of the company, and then we'll get into the behind the MBA admissions curtain slides. So top ranked on some leading MBA ranking websites for many years. I've been a speaker at the annual GMAT conference before with admissions directors from all of the top schools. Overall, we claim a 96% success rate, but it's actually a little bit higher last year. And another number that we're now starting to share is 100% of our clients that applied to 6 or more schools got accepted. So everybody. And that was very exciting in this past year. One of the reasons is we push people to apply to a lot of schools. So we don't do a lot of the I'm just going for Stanford and I have a 720 GMAT and I'm going to see what happens. We probably won't take you, right? So we're selective in taking clients. We're taking the right clients, the fun clients, the easy clients, we want to work with that have good profiles, good stats, good enough. Don't feel like you can't work with us if you don't have a perfect application. you could have a 700 get into Harvard and a 790 and get rejected, but at least you're in range, right? And realistic about the chances. We got over 6.5 million in scholarships last year as well. So boutique and family operated. I run the company with my sibling, who also is a top MBA, and we're working 7 days a week. So editors are working 7 days a week. I'm as well. And so we really churn material around pretty quickly. Everyone gets direct feedback and support either from myself as the founder or a former top MBA admissions director. So we don't have any junior staff or junior faculty or anything like that on the team. And clients that you can network with at all the top schools. I like to do meetup events at different cities when I'm traveling. And, my LinkedIn is always open. And we also have a pretty robust project management system that helps you to track the entire process. And I can go into more of that, as the days go on. But, we'll have former M7 interviewers. And so that's important, because if you're doing interview prep, you want it done by someone that actually used to do interviewing for a school. Not a team that's going to prep you that hasn't actually been an interviewer, right? And so we have former top interviewers, and also really, really highly qualified editors. You'll be paired with one editor who has at least a master's degree in journalism or higher, PhD from Harvard, English professors, creative writing. So really, really good writers to help you to perfect the process throughout the entire journey. And you can start early. So if you're watching this and you're saying, hey, you know what, I'm just kind of getting the lay of the land, I don't know what I want to do yet, that's fine. We have early MBA planning packages guided towards folks that are looking to improve their profile. Whether you're applying later this year and say, I don't have good extracurriculars. What's Scott talking about with his extracurriculars? I don't have those. Or I'm applying, 6 months, a year, 2 years down the line, and I really want to beef up the profile. We have the best tutoring in the industry. Honestly, we're very, very close to full. Many of our time slots are full right now for tutoring. So if you want tutoring, I ask to be flexible on your calendar and reach out and let us know. But we have in-house software that you can use to guide through the sessions with modules, sample questions, thousands of answers, full-length exams. We can certainly talk more about that tutoring offline. So briefly about me. So I went to MIT for undergrad and Wharton for my MBA, and worked across a number of different industries, consulting, financial services, travel and hospitality, and on the board of directors for AGAC. AGAC is the Association of International Graduate Admissions Consultants. And shout out, we have our applicant fair that's coming up in a couple of weeks. So shoot me an email if you want to have more information on that, scott@personalmbacoach.com. But we do a lot of different things with admissions directors. Also joined by MJ Shores, former Wharton and UCLA admissions director who served on a number of different boards and quoted in various publications. And we have Nicole on our team from Columbia, who's an advisor and former admissions director at CBS. And then Erin, my sister, who runs the company with me. So before we get into what happens behind the MBA admissions curtain, we're going to play a few minutes of videos from some former clients, just to talk a little bit about their experiences.
Application itself was for the essays. The biggest thing probably in the application itself was for the essays. I had no idea that I had to be so specific. I thought I could write the high level, here's what I've done and here's what I hope to do. But knowing that you have to be literally, here are the classes I'm going to take, and I think they will fill these gaps, and this is how, this is the clubs I'll join and what I'll contribute at a very specific and tangible level. I would have never thought to bring the essay in that direction. And then it ended up being, the best way to showcase that I had a good grasp on my strengths and weaknesses and what I want to get out of the program. And I would have never thought that would have been the best way to communicate it.
In my essays and in my interviews, the advice the feedback that I consistently received was you need to be yourself, and you need to believe in yourself that your story is good enough and your qualifications are good enough to go where you want to go. So I think that in turn, that authenticity brought out a sense of confidence that helped me during my interview.
I think one of the pieces of advice that stuck with me the most was really understanding that just because I think something is small, or just because I don't think something on my resume was that outstanding, every experience can be highlighted and told in a way that is amazing. Because regardless of the background you're coming with, you have a story to tell.
So going into this, I thought I had a pretty clear idea of what industry I wanted to pursue. And so I was really eager to begin the writing process. But personal MBA coach challenged me to really continually refine those goals. And that ultimately was the basis for all of my essays.
When you think about like the career change that you want, you say, okay, here's the industry change I want, or like, here's the new role that I want, but what specific classes or like what specific skills do I want to do in my MBA program that will help me get there? I think like I already knew I wanted to go from A to B, but what is that path from A to B? Like what is business school going to do to help me get there? And so I think that was really something that I hadn't looked as much into. Like I knew kind of vaguely what skills I wanted, but what classes did that actually mean? Or like what clubs and opportunities did that entail? And so I think that helps me have a much more solid path in terms of envisioning like how I'm going to get there.
Okay, great. So hopefully you could all hear that. If the video was a little bit faster, the video was slower than the audio, apologies. But these are all folks that have worked with us in the last year. And one thing to note about Sid, I'll be doing a one-on-one interview with Sid soon, actually. But he got into the Harvard MS MBA, and so that's obviously pretty selective. They take a very small number, and I think he was the only. Definitely the only guy from India to get in this last year. So thanks Sid and everybody else for your time. So what happens behind the curtain? So first, who's on the admissions committee? As I mentioned briefly earlier, this is going to vary by school size, and not just size, just by school. You could have recruiting staff. You could have career office staff. You could have outside readers. You can have students. You can have deans, you can have some other folks. Obviously, full-time MBA admissions directors make up the bulk of a committee. But the reason why it's important to think about who's on the staff is because goals are important, right? And this is not a presentation on goals, and I have 100 presentations I give. So you can watch our other presentations, go to our YouTube channel. We're doing different Instagram stuff. Go on those channels, visit our website. We have a lot of free videos on our website too. So personalmbacoach.com, interviews with Columbia Business School, head of the executive in residences program, interviews with other admissions directors live. But I'll say briefly about the goals today. You want to make sure that different people will buy into your strategy. Schools that have anyone from the career office weighing in, they do so to, cut through the noise and ensure that what you're writing is actually going to be reasonable. Last thing a school wants is for somebody to get there and say, hey, X school, why don't you help me to get this venture capital job that I really wanted, right? So that's why you probably shouldn't write about VC for most of you. Now, some of you certainly can write about VC and will get the job, but honestly, most of you won't, right? And so you want to make sure that you're writing things that admissions director and a career services representative are going to believe is possible through their program. Again, sometimes you might have second year students reading apps, interviewing, making recommendations. So when you have that coffee chat with somebody, it's evaluative. There's no such thing as non-evaluative in this process. So you might have an event here or there, and they might say, oh, this is casual chat with students, and don't worry, it's not evaluative. That's not really the case. Anything can leak into this process. And again, you might have deans, you might have academic program staff, right? So there's different people that are going to see what kind of impact you'll have on the community. So what's the committee evaluating? This is kind of obvious, but your professional experience. So what I mean by this is, what have you done and why is it impressive? This doesn't mean, oh, have you worked at McKinsey or Goldman Sachs or Blackstone? If not, out the door. No, people get in with a variety of different backgrounds. Professional experience is very broad. What have you done at work that's going to impress somebody, that's going to make you a good student in the classroom? And you need a very small group of highly talented folks to be able to read through the noise and figure out what you're doing, especially if you're coming from a small family business. So we have a lot of family business clients, a lot of smaller companies in India and China, where AdCom directors just might not know about the organization. Every week I get a client that comes from a place that I've never heard of, right? And so, it's important to think through, like, what are you doing with that experience? And so they're evaluating the experience, leadership impact, leadership potential, right? We say potential here because you might not have led, and that's okay. I mean, obviously it's better if you lead a team of 10 people than lead nobody, but plenty of people don't lead. I didn't have a ton of leadership before going to business school myself. Academic ability. So ability means either past experience doing well academically, good test score, analytical stuff that you're doing at work, recommender writing about your analytics, somehow demonstrating your ability to do well in the classroom. And that's what they're evaluating. And they're evaluating that to see whether you can survive. And they're ranking you, let's say, it's not like a forced ranking, but if you get, let's say you get above the average test score, well, maybe you can do the work. But if you get 770, they might take you over 730 just because it helps them. So why not? The career path and the reason for pursuing an MBA, how clear is this? One of the good things about this process is once you go through it so many times, it's really fast and really easy to see how well thought out someone's career path is. And sometimes I'll hear stories where, like, I'm lost and I don't even know what the candidate is trying to say by the end of the conversation, versus a story that's super thorough. I've done this yesterday. Here's what I'm doing today. Here's what I want to do tomorrow. And that clear and consistent strategy and message is really what's going to get you accepted. So those are the things that they're evaluating. Again, in a little bit more depth, professional experience, it's the progression, right? So even if you don't start out at the best role, I just talked to somebody, and I'll keep it anonymous, but I just talked to somebody before this webinar that started out in a role that was not their ultimate best role, and not even a role that they really wanted to have. But then where they finished was pretty impressive. And so I said, hey, let's talk about that, right? It's good to start out somewhere that's not high if you have that progression. Conversely, if you get hired as a senior analyst and you're a senior analyst 5 years later with a similar salary, that's not so good. There's not that progression. They want to see that unique perspective that you'll be able to share in the class. So what are you bringing to the table? It doesn't mean you have to have a unique role or unique company, but what's the perspective that you have? What are you bringing to the classroom that someone else might not be bringing from a similar job, or maybe a different job in some cases? And relevant experiences to apply to your future career. So they are seeing how well they're connected. Now, you can definitely make a change, right? Plenty of people change jobs or industries or functions or everything, but it has to make sense. And so if you have a goal that really has nothing at all to do with what you've done in the past, and what you've done isn't that unique, and it's not something that you're going to bring to bear to the classroom, that might not be so good. So keep that in mind when you think about your post-MBA goals. Leadership potential. What does this mean? It means I'm looking at your work. What have you done as a leader on the job? Volunteer activities. Maybe you say, hey, Scott, this isn't fair. I trade for a living. Okay. I'm in the morning. I'm done the early afternoon. I make my company a lot of money. I trade stocks. Now what? How can I lead? Well, maybe you'll do things outside of work, right? So once you're done in the afternoon, let's do something different, or at night or on the weekend. Let's start a nonprofit, right? Let's try to get on the board of an existing one. Let's do things that are going to show your true leadership potential. And if you haven't done that, there's definitely still time to do so. Sports, right? You could show leadership in sports. Is this the best? Probably not, right? But it's something. And just other community engagement, whether it's volunteer, nonprofit, that type of thing. So academic ability, there is a real correlation between the test scores and success in the first year of an MBA program. And this comes from our admissions directors on our team that talk with us, and they look at the analysis that the schools do. And so they want to see a good score, because the higher the score, the more likely you'll do well in the classroom. And they don't want to accept anybody that hasn't done well, because then they might not do well in the classroom. So, this means your undergraduate performance. This means GMAT, GRE, executive assessment, right? Any of those metrics. And so at the end of the day, you really want to do well, and that's what it comes down to. But just to note here, this is going to vary based on the applicant. I'm sure it's not a level playing field. The world is not fair in many ways, and similar with MBA applications and other graduate school applications. We do a lot of dual degrees as well. if you're from an overrepresented background, you'll need to score higher. If you're from an underrepresented background, you won't need to score as high. That's just how the process works. And so make sure that you know your competitive set and where people tend to score who compete with you. So the focus career path, are your goals specific? Do you have an understanding of this path? So what I mean by do you have an understanding, I mean, can you clearly articulate to an audience what you've done, why you've done it, and what you want to do going forward, and what you want to do going forward is going to do to help you to get to what you really want to do going forward in the longer term, and connecting all these things together. And then, oh, along the way, I'm going to business school. I need to learn certain core concepts in the classroom in order to be able to get there. And really having a vision for how you will drive impact. It doesn't mean you have to have one really specific job at one company, one industry or something, but have some general idea. I'm an engineer, right? And I do a lot of product testing work now. And I'm great. I've been promoted. I'm the lead product testing engineer for Scott Edinburgh's pizza company. But I want to do more. I don't want to just test the pizza oven designs. This is a bad example. I want to figure out what's the corporate strategy. Should we have pizza? Should we have other products? Do I need to engineer mobile pizza ovens versus just ovens in the locations, right? And so I want to be more of a product owner or maybe a product manager post MBA. In order to be a product manager, I need to learn these specific skill sets to get there. Reasons for pursuing an MBA. Knowing the detail of the program. Look, some schools don't care about this. I'll just be honest. And this is a general slide. I don't know anything about you, where you're applying, when you're applying, what food you like to eat, or really anything like that. But some schools that you're applying to will care about demonstrated knowledge, demonstrated program knowledge. So that's going to be important. And also a clear understanding of how an MBA will help you. So again, like what are the core things that you're going to learn in this program? And based on these core things, what are your kind of next steps for you? And then the identification of program fit. Certain schools are really focused on fit. And if you're not going to fit into the school and you're not demonstrating the fit, they won't accept you. You could have an 820 GMAT. They don't care. They just want to fill up the class with people that are going to be really good contributors to the program and will be a great fit. And so make sure that you know which schools are focused on fit. I might talk about that in a little bit. So this demonstrated interest, right? This is a list. So asterisk, select examples shown, not a complete list. Don't hold me to this. Everyone might have a different opinion, but based on 15 years of doing this, this is what I see. Columbia Business School, they want to see fit. MIT, they want to see fit. Duke, Darden, Ross, Tuck, those are some other schools that are also interested in fit. This is not a complete list. There are others. Schools that don't formally demonstrate, fit, and they don't use fit in the evaluation. You're not going to apply to Stanford, and they'll look through and say, how many students have you taught? Ooh, Scott only talked to one student at GSB. Mary talked to 17,000 students. Mary is more interested in Stanford. They don't work that way. But the schools that do focus on demonstrated interest, keep that in mind as you're going through your evaluation process. Okay, so now we'll go through the application review process. So you've created the application, you've hired us to do the apps, you got the best essays possible, you want to maximize your scholarships, you're working with me as the founder, we got everything perfect. Okay, now we submit it. Now what? First, there's a review for completeness by an operations team. Okay, someone's going to go through. If you forget something, don't worry about it. Happens all the time. Every year we have clients that forget something, and you know what? They still get in. So don't worry about it. Now, it doesn't mean you should forget 5 things and have 6 typos in your resume or anything like that. But if something is missing, not a big deal. They'll probably reach out and say, hey, I didn't see the analytical writing score, whatever it might be. Then you have an initial evaluation. So this could be by one person or it could be by multiple people. Let's take Chicago Booth, for example. So shout out to Booth. They have a wonderful team, a great program, very analytical. This isn't like a understand the school webinar. We have that too. We have understanding the MBA landscape, and that's another webinar on our website if you want to learn more about all the different types of programs that are out there. But let's say you're applying to Booth. They have one review by one person before it goes on to interview. So depends how you look at it. I mean, that's both good and bad. If the person really likes you and they like what you have, shoom, you're off to the interview. But what does that mean as well? That means that you're sure there'll be multiple reviews afterwards by probably more than one person. And so the interview might not mean that you get accepted, right? Some schools might be a little bit more thorough in the initial evaluation process. Take NYU, for instance. They're looking at things really, really well. Harvard as well. By the time you're invited to interview, they like you. It doesn't mean that you'll 100% get in after the interview, of course, but it means that there won't be red flags where they say, oh, definitely can't take him because of this or can't take her because of that. They will have already kind of looked at that and decided before the interview. So then you're invited to interview. Now, some schools interview everybody. So Dartmouth Tuck, you can interview if you want to. Duke, you can interview. Darden, if you apply through early decision, you can interview. Kellogg interviews everybody, and okay, maybe some others too. If you're looking at doing an executive MBA program, a lot of the executive MBAs interview. They're looking at it as an interview for you as much as it is for them. So how is it being used? First, if you've ever interviewed for a job, it's just like that. Are you the right fit, right? But at the end of the day, there are some core things that they're looking for. So they want to see the candidate's personality and interpersonal skills. Are you going to be a good interviewer? They can't retrain you, right? So if you get in the room and you're just very awkward, you're very soft-spoken, you're extremely nervous, you're too aggressive and too loud, and you're kind of obnoxious, like these are things that schools will say, goodbye, I don't want you in my classroom. I don't think you'll present the school well when interviewing for jobs. So you really want to be as approachable as you can be. What are your personality traits? What's your interpersonal skill set like? Pressure test your goals. Maybe you're writing something and they think, you know what? Okay, this is not the perfect goal. Like I would not have thought that Maria would write about investment banking with her background, but let's give her the benefit of the doubt. Let's see how she could sell it in the interview. So we invite Maria to campus, we interview her, and we ask a lot about the goals. We talk about what she wants to do in banking, why banking, what things she would enjoy, what roles she would like to do, what companies she would admire, and why. And if she can impress us and answer some really tough questions, great, we'll take her on board. If, I'm not super impressed or there's kind of wishy-washy, maybe if I'm unsure about the goal, plus the answers aren't that confident in the interview, that might be reason enough to lead to a rejection. Evaluating interest in the program, right? Again, for some schools, you can write whatever you want to write. And look, I mean, everybody's hiring a consultant to work with them on the applications. And so the essays are going to be good. But what does that mean as far as how much you really want to go to that school and how you can demonstrate that? A consultant can't sit with you in the interview. So now it's up to you, right? To convince somebody on the other side of the room or the computer, hopefully in the room. I mean, let's get there. But anyway, why you want to go to that school? Well, they'll ask more detailed questions. They'll have to go into more depth. Okay, so you wrote about the healthcare management program for Wharton. Okay, great. Well, now if I'm going to interview you and let's say you talk to June Kinney, healthcare, she'll really have a good sense for why you want to go there and what things you enjoy about the program. And you can't fool her. So if you don't really have that interest, it'll be pretty apparent. We're going to predict future performance, right? So I want to take somebody who's going to do well in the interview, because if you don't do well, you're just going to make my school look bad. So I want to predict how well you'll do in the future in interviews. It doesn't mean you'll have to do perfectly. Don't worry about that. I'm not the smoothest talker in the world, and you probably are already getting a sense of that. But you can do well enough that then the school can train you. So I took a lot of public speaking classes at Wharton. I think it helped me a little bit. And you can always grow. I can always grow. So you don't have to be perfect, but they are predicting future performance. And then maybe they're going to discuss something that's not in the application, right? Perhaps there's a gap or something that wasn't clear. You didn't really focus on analytical experiences, or, hey, I don't see anything about you working in teams. And this is Kellogg, okay? Teamwork is important. Maybe I want to talk about that, right? And so, it's possible that the interviewer happens to cover teamwork. Of course, Kellogg, an alum is usually going to do the interview, and so they won't have read your application. But maybe they'll fill in the gaps and they'll be writing some things about teamwork. And then once they're reading the application, they'll kind of use that to fully round out their evaluation. Okay, so decisions. Decisions are either released on a rolling basis or a specific date. And Columbia is rolling, right? So the sooner you submit, the better. Usually 6 to 8 weeks to get a result. And, here we are. It's the end of April. So we're heavy into writing. We know what some of the questions are going to be for certain schools. We know that certain schools might change some of the questions. And so it's definitely not too soon to get started. Now, let's say you're denied. Okay, then you wait until the following year to reapply. And reapplying is fine. No issues at all. About 10% of people reapply. So take Harvard. That's over 90 kids every year that get in on the second time or maybe the third time. Some schools offer feedback. If you find a school that's offering feedback, take the feedback, write down the notes. That's great. A lot of them don't. And it's just a bandwidth issue. It's nothing personal. There are a lot of you and not a lot of them. So if you have, 3,000 people that got rejected from a school, they just can't get through everybody. So that's the main reason why schools don't offer feedback. But sometimes they do. So waitlist. It is possible to get off the waitlist. I'll say that again. It's possible to get it. We got Harvard Business School, 2 people, round 1 off the waitlist between round 1 and round 2. It happens. So if you get waitlisted, don't worry about it. You can still get in. That said, it's hard to predict whether you will get in. They're not ranked. They're not, it just depends on who, like you, is, going versus not going. And they want, again, this well-rounded class. So if they have 4 Scots already, they accepted 4 and all 4 came. They only wanted 2, and I'm the 5th Scot on a wait list. No chance in the world of me getting in. They have too many Scots. And so I could send them 800 GMAT score, all the best leadership activities. I still might not get in if they literally do not need anybody like me. However, if conversely, they can take 1 more Scot. Okay, they had 2, they could go up to 3. I raise my score, I demonstrate interest. Okay, then maybe I get it. So it's a good place to be, but depending on the situation, you may or may not get off. The one piece of advice I'll give you here on waitlist, and sometimes people are surprised to hear this. Let's say the average score is a 730 for the school, and I don't know. Let's say you're a male and you have a 710 or 720, and you don't retake the test. Don't even bother to stay on the wait list. I mean, you might as well take yourself off. The odds of getting off are so low to be under the average and be on a wait list. I mean, it's a clear signal that they want you to raise your score. Now, that doesn't mean the score will always be the reason why you need to get off the list. But, if you're overrepresented and the score's low and their average is higher and you're waitlisted, they're trying to send you some kind of a message, most likely. So next steps. So identify weaknesses and start, mitigating. Maybe there's just too many candidates, right? So it could be that there's no weakness and your numbers are fine. You have a 750 and nothing to worry about. But, you just have to wait. Check the policies for each school because they might want to hear from you. They might want to hear from you once. Now, if a school says we will take an update on this date, that's what they want to see. If you send multiple updates, not good. Don't send long waitlist notes. Sometimes we see notes being too long. This is an update. It's brief. You don't want to send 1,000 words, 800 words as an update. Way, way too long. Keep it brief, right? They're evaluating all the things that you're doing. Look, I mean, updated scores, you can definitely submit updated scores. As far as like job changes, you got to follow the school, right? And see if they're going to take new things. If they're going to take new things, then if you're getting a promotion, that's great. But try not to write something in a wait list that is just for the sake of writing it, right? So on this latest deal I did a $800 gazillion deal with the Swedish Fish Company of America, and probably nobody cares, right? So write about things that are really going to show your leadership. So again, a little bit more about Personal MBA Coach and how we can help you through this process. Again, for those that didn't catch the beginning of it, I'm Scott Edinburgh, founder of Personal MBA Coach. I went to MIT for undergrad, Wharton for my MBA, and we run this company for the last 15 years. We have some of the highest success rates in the industry. We got $6.5 million in scholarships last year. We offer complete tutoring, GMAT, GRE, and executive assessment, in-house software that you can use to guide through the sessions with modules, sample questions, thousands of answers. We'll help you through all the parts of the process. I won't give you the whole pitch today, but if you're interested in learning about us, reach out. We do offer consultations. To be clear, these are free consultations for those interested in working with us. We do not have the bandwidth to help folks that just have questions. So if you just have questions, honestly, don't reach out. But if you have any interest in working with us and review our packages and prices, reach out. We'd love to have a conversation. It will help you with the school selection, figuring out the schools based on the fit, the profile, the chances of getting in, career prospects, all of that. Very detailed essay guidance. We have some of the most thorough guides out there, and an extremely robust team to help you throughout the entire journey. And so anyway, I can talk more about this later on. We're going to go to questions now. And here's a guide. I throw up a guide at the end of every webinar. I know you can't click on this, but just go to our website. The point is, visit our website. We have videos, we have downloadables. This is all free. So whether you're going to hire us or not, get some materials, why not? Send it around to friends. And I will leave it here while we go to questions. So feel free to ask any questions that you have. Okay, so I have a question. I want to know the impact of a drop year on one's application and on chances of admission. So I think what this means, and correct me, please, Vandana, by reposting if I misinterpreted this. I think you mean a gap year where you didn't do anything for a year. If you have a gap year, that's okay. It's more okay. If you have that when you're younger, if it's now and you're like, hey, I haven't done anything for the past year, can't really blame COVID anymore, right? So I think it's better if it's earlier on in the career, and just talk about what it is that you've been doing, right? So during the gap year, were you traveling? Were you learning a new language? Were you watching Netflix and eating popcorn, right? So what were you doing, and how are you going to use that to help improve the community? But I would say it's probably not a huge impact if the rest of the work experience was strong. Okay, so here's another question. Do we have generous scholarships for January intake in Columbia Business School? Yeah, so we do a lot of work for CBS J-term. And so, yeah, definitely reach out if you want some help. To be honest, I don't have like exact numbers of J-term versus ED versus regular decision from a scholarship perspective, but we definitely have people that get scholarships for January term. So, no issues, no concerns about that. If you're strong and you submit a good application and they like you, then you certainly have the potential to get scholarships. So I wouldn't think that the term would really change that. Okay, here from Under the Sea. Hi, Scott. I'm wondering how a rotational program is viewed. Are you at a disadvantage since there's a lack of promotions? Really good question. I like that one. So I like rotational programs. I think that they're, one, hard to get into. I mean, for the most part, right? I don't know what rotational program you're in, but they're good programs. They're set up for smart people that are going to do well in this process in the world and business. And you're seeing a lot of different things. So while yes, you wouldn't have gotten promoted if you're doing 4 different roles in 2 years, you're going to see a lot. And so you'll have different things that you can bring to bear and help your classmates think through. The other thing is, after the rotational program, that's really where I see sort of the line separating, right? So some people, they go and they sort of flounder and, oh, what am I doing? And yada, yada. And other people, they get a really good role in the finance division. Year and a half later, they're promoted. Now they apply with 4 years of experience. They've already had one promotion. They've done the rotations. So, that's where the promotions are going to be more important. If it's a longer rotational program, then don't worry about that. So question about the impact and timing in the applications. So look, I mean, round 1 is better than round 2. There's no school out there that has a higher round 2 acceptance rate. If you hear that, there's a lot of BS out there in the world. I don't know what to tell you. But there's no school that accepts more people in round 2 every year. Now, okay, there are instances where in some years a school doesn't get enough people that they wanted to get in the first round, and thus it might seem like the second round is easier, but that's never, the case to plan on at this stage. So, applying earlier is better than later. Certain schools, it's a lot harder to get in. It could be twice as hard to get in the second round. Others, it could be, similar, or maybe a little bit harder. As far as years of experience, we send people with 1-2 years of experience to top schools. I mean, I got Columbia. A woman a few years ago was at JP Morgan for a year, applied to Columbia, and then what? Now you might be sitting here thinking, Scott, you just told me I wasn't experienced enough when I had 3 years. So what gives, right? Everybody's different. And every situation is different. The more experience you have, the better. But that said, it is going to depend on what you do, your risk tolerance, and everything like that. At the same time, it's kind of like a bell curve. Once you're past, say 5 years is up here, if you're 12 years out and you want to go to a full-time MBA, that's going to be tough. I don't know that we'll take you as a client, right? So you have to make sure that you're going to be competitive enough to be able to get into these programs. And so that's important. And then as far as the how many round one, how many round two, all that sort of thing, do it all in the first round, right? Unless you're planning on failure. The only way round two works is if you're like, hey, I don't think I'm going to get interviews anywhere, so I'll know by October that I did not get invited to interview, and I'll have plenty of time for round two. If that happens, you will. But if you're planning on failure, then why are you even bothering to apply to the schools to begin with? Well, let's plan on success. So plan on at least getting some interviews, right? If you get some interviews, then you don't hear back the results until early December, and that's really late. So apply to everything in the first round itself. Here's a question. I had 8 years of experience in financial services, Amex and MasterCard, but have non-engineering background. Okay. What are the chances to get into good B schools for 1-year MBA if my GMAT score is below 700? So, it's, I would need to know more about you, honestly, before, beyond just that. 1-year MBAs do tend to take slightly older people. So I think the 8 years is not a huge turnoff for the 1 year. It would make it harder, but it's not a huge difference. As far as the below 700, I need to look at the whole resume, to be able to fully evaluate that. So, feel free to shoot an email and let me know. But it's going to depend on the program. Like if you're going for, Kellogg 1-year MBA and you have a 680 GMAT, I don't know. I mean, it might work out. It might not work out, right? It just kind of depends on how competitive you are with everything else in your profile. Okay, here's another question. Please name some schools that are more friendly toward older international applicants, 10 or more years. So INSEAD tends to be a little bit friendlier towards the older applicants. IMD as well. Columbia January term, the 1-year programs, so Cornell, Emory, Kellogg. But that said, 10 or more years, you're looking at executive MBA. It's not very common for people with more than 10 years of experience to get into a full-time program. Does it happen? Yes. Not that often. There's a chart I have that I sometimes share. It's a Harvard Business School age distribution by years of experience, and 9+, it's like 20 to 30 people, like out of over 900. So not a lot of people getting in. Okay, how early should one start working toward their MBA application? For example, I just completed my undergraduate from India. What should my next steps be? Yeah, so great question, and congrats on finishing. Early planning can start anytime. We recommend the sooner you start, the better. That way you can be clear that you've done everything you possibly can to maximize your chances of getting accepted. What that means is you're building up extracurriculars, you're starting organizations, you're trying to get on the board of existing ones. It's never too early to start. I mean, we have folks, I had someone in high school reach out, which is really early, but we definitely have folks in college that do early planning, and certainly right after. Do candidates from overrepresented groups have significantly lower chances of admission in round two vis-a-vis round one? Yeah, so that's definitely a good question. I wouldn't say just being overrepresented means that you have a likely chance of getting in round one as or round two. I would say it just depends who they've taken that kind of looks and feels like you. So like if there are tons of people like you and they've taken a lot of them, it's going to make it harder. Sometimes I hear, MIT took all the Saudi applicants in round one this year, or something like, there are things that happen now. Doesn't mean they're taking 25 people from, Saudi. So like, I wouldn't say that's overrepresented and there's tons of applicants, but it might just be that, hey, by the time round two comes, they kind of don't need as many people that are like you. So that's a really good question. Any other questions from folks? Feel free to keep asking. So I got a question. So number of schools, how many do I really need to apply to? So most people are doing, 6 or more. Almost everybody that we work with is in the, 5+ range. Every once in a while here or there, we get the, hey, I'm only going to do 1 or 2 and I understand the risk. That's fine. But you want to do a lot of schools. It's challenging and you never know what's going to work out. I mean, we got 6 people into Stanford in round one of this year. One person that deferred his interview to round 2. So anyway, but some of them didn't get in anywhere else. And so 2 of them, that's all only place they got into was Stanford. And you think, how is that possible? Right? It happens, right? So there's just random things. Do schools distinguish if someone from a particular country lives in a different country? Yes. So they schools want well-rounded applicants, right? So like if you're Filipino, you're Filipino. You can live in Antarctica, you're still Filipino. So if they don't want like 150 Filipinos in the class, then you would count as one of them, even by living in Antarctica. But what's going to be different about you is, besides being cold, is that you're going to bring a different perspective, right? So you'll be that much more interesting than, let's say, someone who's never left the Philippines. And so that's where it both, it's like it's similar and it's different at the same time. That's a really good question. And so the question was, the older applicant. I see. Yep. So for full-time 2-year MBA, full-time 2-year MBA with more than 10 years is not a good place to be, Deepak. Unfortunately, it's going to be really tough, especially as an Indian male. I just don't think that the odds are in your favor. Doesn't mean it won't work out. Every year people get in, but numbers are very small. So I would recommend rethinking your approach. If you have more than 10 years of experience from India and looking for a 2-year full-time, I'd recommend rethinking the approach, to be honest. And the other thing is the program that's right for you might be the program that you don't think is right for you. So add other schools, right? Think about other models, think about executive, think about part-time, think about a dual degree. There are some interesting backdoor ways to get into some of these schools where, the notion is, applying to a dual degree is tough. It's harder to get in, which often is the case, but not always. There's some dual degrees we love because it actually makes it a little bit easier to get into the program. So, make sure to get the right advisor who can guide you through that. How easy is it to get an MBA after a master's in finance at a top UK university? So I wouldn't say the master's in finance is going to help you get the MBA, but it's probably not going to hurt that much either. I think the thing that you have to think about is why the MBA, right? So what is it about and so I had some work travels, if you see me a bit tired. What is it about the program that you're going to get out of the MBA that you don't get from the Masters of Finance? So, if you have a Master of Finance, you can't talk about learning financial management, leadership skills, and being a better investment banker or whatever, because you probably got that in the Masters of Finance. So think about, why is the MBA the right program for you specifically? So for those of you that we didn't get to all of your questions, feel free to reach out and let me know. The website is personalmbacoach.com. We're happy to review your details and go over ways that we can help you throughout this process. Wish everybody the best of luck. And thank you so much for joining, and hope to see you all soon.